So welcome everyone to our first shared Oxia Women St. Phoebe Center for the Deaconess event. It's great to have you with us. Oxia Women is a network by, for, and about Orthodox women in the service of Christ. We see a big part of our job as making women's voices heard and spotlighting the amazing work that so many women do in their parishes and their dioceses and beyond. And you can find out more by checking out our website. You can sign up for a weekly email, or you can follow us on Instagram or Facebook. We host regular online events that showcase Orthodox women's expertise in a wide variety of fields. So before us tonight, we have our third in a series of events about integrating girls and boys into the liturgy. And our moderator will be taking you through what those look like, where you can find the recordings, and how this event fits into that series. And so that we can begin, I am honored to introduce our moderator, Dr. Teva Regul. Dr. Regul was raised in the Orthodox Church and has been an active member for all of her life. For much of that time, she has been closely involved in a variety of ministries, usually rising to a leadership position wherever she has served. She worked on the national level of the American Romanian Orthodox Youth, organized and coordinated various Orthodox Christian fellowships. And for over 15 years, she served as managing editor of the St. Nino Quarterly, a publication dedicated to exploring the ministry of women in the Orthodox Church. And she has served as an Orthodox consultant for a number of consultations on women and men sponsored by the World Council of Churches. She received her Master of Divinity degree at Holy Cross Greek Orthodox School of Theology with highest distinction, and her PhD, which focused on liturgical theology and history, she received from Boston College. Dr. Regul continues to teach theology. She serves on the board of the St. Phoebe Center for the Deaconess. She stands as the current president of the Orthodox Theological Society in America, and she is the leading expert in America on how to organize and maintain parish programs that integrate girls and boys into the liturgy. She has long been a valued advisor to Oxia Women and has given some of our most requested presentations. Teva, welcome back. It's all yours.
Wow. Thank you very much. I hope I wanted to say on behalf of the St. Phoebe Center for the Deaconess that we're excited to be collaborating with Oxia Women once again to explore the ministry of women and girls and to help build up the body of Christ in general. I would like to share, I can try to share my screen here. Basically, here we are. You can see on the St. Phoebe website some of our upcoming events. You can get to the St. Phoebe website from orthodoxdeaconess.org/events and go to upcoming events. You see this evening's presentation, and also this coming Tuesday, we will actually, many of our board members are participating in a documentary that will on the Deaconess that will be aired by Ancient Faith Radio. And we invite you to participate in that event by calling in if you so desire. A little bit about the format of our event for this evening. Before I introduce it, I would like to review some of our format and logistics. Our program will begin with a review of past events in this series. Then I will introduce the panelists for our event. And during their presentations, you will be able to send questions and/or comments to the co-hosts. Use the chat function to submit your written questions. After the presentations, we will open the floor for further questions and discussion, and the chat function will be open for communication among all participants. If you would like to ask a question of one of our presenters, raise your hand in the reactions button to submit your question. We will then ask you to unmute so that you may speak to the group. And we ask that you pose any questions in a respectful manner. The St. Phoebe Center seeks to promote respectful and reasoned discussion about once again ordaining women to the diaconate of the Orthodox Church, as well as to promote the lay participation of women and girls. We expect that all participants, both panelists and attendees, will treat each other with the highest regard, acknowledging that we are all children of God, and will engage with the topic at hand and refrain from personal criticism. We ask that if any specific example in the life of the church is offered, that any identifying remarks of people involved, or if a personal story of others involved, be withheld so that we may discuss issues generally and with respect for privacy. Participants who engage in personal attacks or otherwise denigrate the conversation will not be welcome at our events. And finally, we encourage a curious, robust, and respectful engagement with the work of the St. Phoebe Center. This is a Zoom meeting, which means that we can see one another, and we hope that this will facilitate a robust dialogue. However, if you do not wish to be seen, you can turn off your camera, and we will be spotlighting the speakers during the respective presentations. In case of technical difficulties on this end, we suggest that you set your screen for speaker view in order to focus on their participation particularly. You can do so by toggling the setting in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. And note that the seminar is being recorded, and once edited, we plan to post it on our website. And before I begin, I would like to invite Father Peter Baktis to give us our opening prayer. Let me find you first here.
Thank you, Tiva. If you pray with me, O Lord Jesus Christ, our incarnate God, who revealed himself and revealed the ministry that you have brought of reconciliation, peace, and wholeness to your world. You called first your mother, who brought about the incarnation for us and inaugurated the ministry to which we receive. You've called many to follow in that ministry, and we are just mere witnesses. We ask that you bless this time together, that you send your Holy Spirit to guide and lead us and open our hearts to discern the truth that you reveal to us each and every day of our life. And may we forever remember all those who you have called us to serve, so that we may be servants of you, the servant of all. Amen.
Thank you very much, Father Peter. Now I will, everyone now share my screen. And we'd now like to turn to the event at hand. One of the most pressing pastoral issues of our day is how to connect our young people to the life of the church, and in particular, our liturgical celebration. Our liturgy can be quite powerful, but it is also quite inaccessible to our young people, especially girls, as their participation tends to be more circumscribed. This event will focus on the participation of girls in the liturgical assembly more particularly. So why focus on liturgy? For the Orthodox, liturgical life of the church is one of the primary ways that the faith is experienced, understood, expressed, and transmitted. It forms the identity of the person made in the image of God and called to grow into his likeness. It nurtures us along the way, and it gives us the possibility to be transformed, as Cyril of Jerusalem says in his mystical catechesis, little Christs. One of the prominent voices of the Russian religious Renaissance in the early 20th century, Bishop Nazarius of Nizhny Novgorod, explains further, and I quote, "The Orthodox faith is acquired, strengthened, and maintained chiefly by means of liturgical worship. Liturgical worship is properly considered to be the best school for teaching faith and morals, for it acts abundantly and salutarily on all the powers and capacities of the soul. But if worship to us accomplish all of this, then all the faithful must participate in it directly, consciously, and actively." So how can we involve our women and girls in worship so that they experience liturgy directly, consciously, and actively? This event is the third in a series organized and hosted by Axia Women in the St. Phoebe Center for the Deaconess that explores this question. And if you're unfamiliar with earlier ones, we have links in the chat that will take you to the previous recordings. In our first installment, we discussed the roles of a tantric reader and altars or congregational servers, and advocated for women and girls in their exercise. We outlined the many benefits to including girls in liturgy as altar or congregational servers. And of course, we also outlined the benefits for the assembly as well, for their own education, for the joy of seeing their daughters participate alongside their sons, and for the modeling of others. And here I'd like to review just briefly some of the slides from that presentation. We began by contextualizing the presentation that all are called to active participation in the liturgy by praying the prayers, singing responses, exchanging the kiss of peace, receiving the Eucharist, etc. All of us have our part to play. Some are bishops, some are presbyters, some are deacons, some are the laity. But our first presentation focused particularly on readers and chanters, altar servers, and also congregational servers. We showed that the calls for participating in this ministry, especially for women, actually are over 100 years old, although most recently in 1988 from the Rhodes Consultation. We then particularly spoke about altar service and showed a number of pictures where women and girls are exercising this ministry. In the context of the Church of Antioch, here you see, participating at the gospel reading at the great entrance, presenting the Antediron, etc. In the Antiochian church, rather the Armenian church, the Coptic church, and also other Antiochian churches. We previewed and understood or explained some of the reasons why some are against this type of ministry for girls, and tried to poke holes in some of their reasoning. But I would like to emphasize the positive things that we said that in terms included for their participation. First, the catechetical value. By participating in liturgy, they can learn about the structure, the flow, and the theology of our celebration by writing it into their bodies, and thereby being able to draw closer to God from their experience. Secondly, it encourages spiritual growth. Alternatively, by disallowing girls just because they are in a female body, it can have a negative effect on their spiritual lives and their connection to God in the liturgical celebration. Third, it adds integrity to the church. Eligibility is not just gender determined, but to serve includes moral considerations as well as respect for the distinction in the minor orders. And lastly, ethical formation. It doesn't give any server a false sense of entitlement that is antithetical to the gospel message of humility in service to Christ and his church. We also showed that other forms of liturgical service that are outside of the altar can have many of these same benefits by including students holding either candles or icons and the gospel reading at the great entrance, and then presenting the basket of Antediron for its blessing. And we showed a number of pictures of that ministry in various settings. Here at the gospel reading, various pictures here, getting lined up for the great entrance processions. At various places, and then presenting the Antediron. We concluded this session by speaking particularly that liturgy is more than just texts. It's what we say, and it's what we do. We inculcate people to gratitude, mercy, love, praise, and service. In our second event in this series, we spoke to women who have actually been tonsured as readers and chanters, as well as liturgical servers, and they shared from their experience. We also highlighted the different ways that parishes were integrating their young girls and boys into our liturgical celebration. In addition, we saw scans that show how neuroscience confirms that the spiritual pain of exclusion correlates very closely with physical pain, as they both operate on the same parts of the brain. And here, just to preview some slides, we showed women or girls participating in the Orthodox Church in Serbia, in Australia, in Greece, and here in the United States. We then spoke particularly about brain development and how important it is, many of the synapses that are coming together as we, especially in our younger years, are formative for our entire lives. And then we actually looked at scans that speak particularly about the centers of pain and show from the scientific point of view that pain from exclusion correlates very closely to physical pain. And you can see here on the slides. I want to thank Dr. Jimena Nedolescu for providing these slides and giving us that part of the presentation. And that brings us to our event of today. In this event, we will continue to highlight how various parishes integrate their young people into the liturgical celebration, especially their girls. We will hear from the perspectives of those who coordinate this ministry and a parent and parish priest about how doing so has benefited their daughter and parish community, respectively. And with that, I will stop my screen share. And I will introduce to us our first presenter. Ms. Anna Kallis is the Youth and Young Adult Ministry professional and currently works as the director of the Telos Project at Crossroads Institute, and earned her Master of Divinity from Holy Cross Greek Orthodox School of Theology in 2013. In addition to working for the Crossroads Institute since 2011, Anna has youth ministry experience working as a curriculum developer for Faith Tree Resources, assisting in the building up of the youth and the young adult ministries of Saints Peter and Paul in Glenview, Illinois, and leading the Chicago Metropolis Lighthouse Summer Camp. Anna cares deeply about connecting young people with Christ and his church and striving to be a conduit of his love in their life. Anna and her husband, Father Cosmos, live in the suburbs of Chicago with their 2 children. I'd like to welcome Anna. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Teva. I am going to share my screen as well and share some slides with you all. It is a joy to be with you all tonight. I'm a strong admirer of the work of both Axia and the St. Phoebe Center. Been admiring their work for a while now. I love following and listening to all that they share and teach. It's so needed for our church today, and I'm excited to have been invited here tonight to share a little bit with you all about what is going on in our parish at Saints Peter and Paul in Glenview, Illinois. We have a beautiful ministry that we call the Myrrh-bearer ministry, and I'm going to share a little bit with you tonight about where it started, how it's evolved, what it looks like today, and why I find it to be so important. Of all the work I do, this one has a special place in my heart. If those smiling faces don't say it enough. So our Myrrh-bearer ministry, I'll start by sharing what we have drafted a mission statement for this ministry, and I want to begin by sharing that with you all. So the mission of our Myrrh-bearer ministry, the aim of this ministry is to provide opportunities for young women to be intimately involved in the liturgical services so that they might cultivate a deeper love for Christ through worship. And all the way that this ministry is developed, we really try to ground everything in this ministry. The ultimate goal is that our young girls might cultivate a deeper love for Christ through worship. So how did it start? It actually started in 2016. It started, and it looked very different then than it does today. So in 2016, at that point, our parish actually had no history. In a lot of the Greek parishes in America, there's a Myrrh-bearer ministry. So the Myrrh-bearer ministry is pretty common. Typically, you see younger girls, and it's a way for girls to get involved on Holy Friday and sometimes in other ways during Holy Week. Typically, young girls, white dresses, participate in the lamentation service or other services on Holy Friday, throwing flowers and really emulating the Myrrh-bearers. So our parish actually did not have a history of this ministry, and our parish priest at the time, not our current priest, but at the time, he and I were close. I was working with the youth at our church, and he asked if we could start one, and we collaborated on what that could look like. And instead of focusing on the younger girls, we actually started with the older girls. So at the time, we invited just 11th and 12th grade girls, and they just participated on Holy Friday and Holy Saturday. What I thought was really unique, I hadn't seen this done in a lot of parishes, and it was actually our priest's idea, was to have the girls be the ones to, instead of the altar boys being the first to receive the light from the priest on anastasy, to have the girls, because as we know in the gospel, it was the women, it was the myrrh-bearers who were the first to witness Christ's resurrection. And so as a true emulation of the myrrh-bearers, we had the girls stand in a semicircle around as our priest came out with the light. They were the first to receive the light, and they were the ones that distributed it to the whole church. We've done this every year since 2016, and it's a really beautiful, beautiful tradition, and so in line with our faith. So they did, that was something really unique I had not seen before, and they also did, the very typical involvement in the lamentation service and the various Holy Friday services. I held a special retreat for them that Friday night into Saturday, and we really got to unpack. They learned a lot. It gave me an opportunity to teach them about the myrrh-bearers. They unpacked their experience, and we stayed up late in the church sanctuary, and it was just a really beautiful, powerful experience for those girls. Here's a few pictures that you can see at the beginning. We had the girls just wearing their own white dresses. They didn't have any particular robes at the time, but it was a really beautiful way to get these teenage girls involved and engaged in our liturgy. And so many of these girls today are still engaged in our church. They're becoming leaders in our church. I've stayed very close with a lot of them. It was a really powerful thing. So then how did it evolve? So in time, in the spring of 2022, His Eminence Metropolitan Nathaniel, who I believe is actually on this call, so thank you, Your Eminence, for being present. He had in his short time as Metropolitan of our metropolis, at least he communicated to us, was hearing from a lot of people the need to better engage our girls in liturgy and in the faith and in the church and in leadership. And he really took that seriously when he was, and I'm really grateful to him for taking that seriously as people came to him with those concerns. And so he actually challenged our parish. He knew we had a myrrh-bearers ministry. We had a history of engaging women in the life and leadership of our parish. And he challenged us to expand our myrrh-bearers ministry. So a collection of us, myself, Dr. Helen, who's on this call, and others, our parish priests at the time, and others talked about how can we expand this ministry. We really wanted to stay grounded in the whole purpose of this is to draw our young girls closer to Christ through liturgy. How do we do that? How can we do that? We were coming up to Holy Week. So we put together a plan. At the time, that plan was just in regards to further expanding their roles during Holy Week. But His Eminence invited us to really do it in a more deep and full way. And so we talked about including them in processions. At the time, they were not really doing any of the processions, any of the actual altar serving. So we talked about what that could look like. We talked about opening up to more ages. And as we talked, especially about the part about involving them in processions, we talked a lot about, of course, how, what kind of prohibits girls from being involved in altar serving and liturgical participation. One of that being that this practice of not allowing women behind the altar. Teva and St. Phoebe have given a bunch of such wonderful education around why that is actually not so in line with our faith, that actually, if you have a blessing and a purpose, gender does not preclude one from being in the altar area. And so to me, if we started talking about involving the girls in the processions, I felt like if we're going to give them a blessing and a purpose to engage liturgically, but we're not going to let them pass through the altar to do something that specifically starts in the altar area and comes back to the altar area, we're actually even more prominently supporting this idea that it is their gender that's precluding them from passing through the altar. And so for me, it was really important that if they're going to be involved in processions, I would really encourage us to have them pass through the altar. I know for a lot of parishes, girls are starting to participate in processions and they're linking up outside the altar. And I do think that's an important first step for a lot of parishes, but it was just something I felt really strongly about. And we spoke with our priest about it, and we asked the Metropolitan's blessing to actually have the girls pass through the altar during these processions. So we put together a very thoughtful plan. It wasn't just a one-off. We actually drafted up a whole plan for how we would proceed. We presented it to His Eminence, to our parish priest. It included this broader age range of 3rd to 12th grade, having them participate liturgically all throughout Holy Week, not just on Friday and Saturday. And it included having them passing through the altar area for the processions. And Metropolitan Nathaniel gave his blessing for this expansion, as did our parish priest. And so that Holy Week in 2022, we, for the first time, had girls participating in this new way in our parish. We drafted a letter. This all kind of came to be a little bit at the last minute. I would have loved a little bit more of a education to our parish prior to it, but it was, I think it might have been, even the day before Saturday of Lazarus that we got the final blessing. So we drafted a letter. We sent it out through our listserv explaining the expansion and the rationale and theology behind it. We distributed it throughout the parish, and we proceeded with this expansion during Holy Week. And it was beautiful and moving and overwhelmingly well received. So then, from then until now, it has even further evolved. So in the fall of 2022, so after Holy Week, there was no regular participation of the Myrrh-bearers, but in that next fall, we invited the Myrrh-bearers to serve every Sunday during the liturgy. So we expanded it to become a regular Sunday role. We came up with a training for them. We had them come. They trained alongside the altar servers. We did some further education. For me, we really intentionally want to keep it the Myrrh-bearers ministry. I think the Myrrh-bearers are such a beautiful example to our young girls. They're such examples of love and just the way they minister to Christ and were so present with him and so courageous in their faith. I want that to remain an example to our girls. So we teach them about the Myrrh-bearers. We want them to still be emulating the Myrrh-bearers while expanding these liturgical roles to look somewhat similar to the other altar servers. So we had a training for them. We invited them to serve each Sunday. Over the past year and a half, we've slowly and thoughtfully continued to expand the scope of the Myrrh-bearers' responsibilities. We really care about educating everyone along the way. We know that while what we're doing is very much in line with our theology, our hierarch has given his blessing, our priest has given his blessing. We know it can come as a shock. It looks different. It's a little bit of a change. It can feel shocking to some. And so we really want to be thoughtful about how we're educating people along the way. As we went to implement this on a weekly basis, we hosted a virtual information session and 2 in-person sessions, inviting those interested or concerned to come and learn more and ask questions. And then this past summer, we have an adult education ministry, and they always host a book club every summer. And this summer, we hosted it on the book, The Church of Our Granddaughters by Carrie Frost, which is a beautiful work. I know St. Phoebe has let everyone know about this work, but it's a beautiful work that articulates so many of these things. And so it's been a beautiful journey. What does their role entail today? So the way it is today is we have our girls, our Myrrh-bearers, participating both in the small entrance and the great entrance should be included there also, the small and great entrance through the altar area. So they come through the altar with the altar boys, they line up and assemble in the back of the altar area together. They do the processions together. They flank the clergy with candles during the gospel. So as you can see in this photo, when our deacon is reading the gospel, he's at the podium, and we have 2 girls on either side, Myrrh-bearers there. The rest of the girls are with the altar servers at the center. If our priest is reading the gospel, they're all at the center together. They remain in the altar area after the gospel as the servers prepare for and participate in the great entrance. They proclaim the creed on the solea. So when we say the creed as a congregation, our altar servers come out and form a semicircle in front of the altar area, and the myrrh-bearers come out with them, and they all proclaim the creed together. It's the myrrh-bearers who bring the bowls of prosophoda to the priests. So after the consecration, so they actually hand the extra bowls of the prosophoda. The priest blesses them over the altar, hands them back to the girls, and they bring them back to be to where they will be served. They read the communion. One of them will read the communion hymn and prayer out loud. I'll lead the whole congregation in that. And then they will hold the communion cloths and the MDiv bowls during communion as needed. So alongside the altar boys. So the altar boys they serve alongside the altar boys in all these ways. The altar boys and the myrrh-bearers together will hold the communion cloths and MDiv bowls. We also invite them. So they are not behind the altar the entire service. They are there for periods of time throughout the service when it links up with when they are serving and how they're serving. Because we've now invited the myrrh-bearers to do this, we have a lot of people now behind the altar with our boys and our girls. So when they're not in an active role, we invite them to sing with our choir and our chanters. We also invite them to read the epistle, but we are clear that this is a separate ministry. They're invited to do this. They often do this, but we also have other girls who feel particularly called to singing, who just sing in the choir, and other folks, boys and girls, who care to read, who take turns reading the epistle. So this is what their role looks like today. This picture is actually from this morning's liturgy. Here's another picture of them participating in the small entrance. So what do they wear and carry? At this point, I'll go back at the end of my presentation. You'll be able to see that first picture again, where you can see the lamp that they hold. At this point, our priest wanted them to hold something different than the altar service. And we together feel like it's nice that there be some kind of a distinction for them as myrrh-bearers, but we want them to be intentional with their holding and what they're wearing and how they're serving. So right now they have these little oil lanterns. We felt like that was something nice for them to carry that would coincide with their role as myrrh-bearers. So they're special, you'll see them a little more closely in the final picture. These special oil lanterns that are candles that an actual flame. They're beautiful. The girls were excited. They for a while were just holding white candles with a plastic cup on them, and they were very excited to get something a little bit more special and intentional to carry. They right now are wearing our junior choir robes, the burgundy ones that we've set aside for them to wear. We are talking in conversations about getting them actual robes. We're still working out the kinks of what they would look like, and if they're going to be altar server, look exactly like the altar server robes or have some distinction. So it's our hope that we will get them some better robes at some point, but right now they are in these burgundy robes. So how has it been received by the community? I have a lot of quotes. I had compiled these and shared them with our Metropolitan. I don't need to read them all, but I do want to read some to you because I do think it's important to hear how our community has been receiving this shift. So this first quote is from our young adult advisor, who 8 years ago, I was given the opportunity to participate in Holy Friday and Anastasi church services. I learned more about St. Mary Magdalene and the myrrh-bearing women and just how special and important they were. 1 year ago, I was given the opportunity to help with our myrrh-bearers ministry as our myrrh-bearers roles were expanding. It's been a true blessing to watch these gals come to church, excited to serve and grow closer to Christ. I am so proud of how far this ministry has come. 16-year-old me could have never imagined I would be here today helping provide a space for these girls to serve. What a true joy it is. Mom of 3rd and 5th grade girls, thank you so much. My daughters are so excited to come to church on Sundays now. I came down on Sunday morning and my daughter was dressed and ready to go at 8:30 a.m. You have no idea how out of the ordinary this is. A mom of a 2nd grader, what you are doing for our daughters with advocating for a space for them as myrrh-bearers has given them a purpose, fellowship, and deeper understanding of not only the services, but how they can serve our church and the Lord. I am truly grateful. a parishioner who is formerly apprehensive about this ministry, very adamantly apprehensive, and I had many conversations with him. Myrrh-bearers at our church has been a fantastic step forward for our girls. I've heard nothing but good comments. Our Sunday school director and mom of a 4th grader. So many moms have told me how their girls are excited to go to church now. Thank you so much for what you are doing. A middle-aged parishioner. I just read the email regarding the new efforts towards the Myrrh-bearers ministry, and the first thought that came to mind is glory to God. Thank you for continually looking for ways to involve all of the youth in our liturgical services and practices. Another middle-aged parishioner, Myrrh-bearers ministry. Wow, may God bless your efforts with our young women that they may grow closer to Christ through this service. Thank you for offering this beautiful ministry. And finally, an older parishioner. I've always told my husband our girls should have a role in serving in the services as well as our boys. I can't believe I get to witness this happening. Wow, this is so important. So of course, there have been some naysayers and some folks that have been struggling with this change and shift and confused and not quite on board. But I would say that the overwhelming response from our community has wildly been positive and just just joyful. People leave these liturgies where there are both girls and boys filling the solea, and I tell this to the girls, it moves me to see so many young people. It impacts my worship experience. I know it impacts their worship experience, but it also impacts mine to see so many young people in the liturgy up there leading and serving, giving their time and energy and really engaging in the liturgy. And I hear that ripple effect throughout our whole community. It's really brought a lot of joy and life into our community. And so how have the girls responded? I do these orientations, these trainings with them, and I always ask them to articulate why they want to be in Myrrh-bearers, why they're excited to serve. And they respond with things like, I wish I recorded them because it's so sweet to hear, them say and articulate these things as young girls, but things like, I want to grow closer to my faith. I want to understand more about what happens during the services. I want to feel closer to God. My brother always talks about serving during the liturgy, and I really want to be able to experience that too. I feel like I have a purpose at liturgy. I love being close to what is happening during the liturgy. And it just hearing in their young voices say the things like this, it's exactly what that's the point, is to draw them in closer to Christ. It's not, their desire is so pure and so pure. They want to be present. They want to be involved. They want to be engaged. They want to understand it more deeply. And we are giving them an opportunity to do so. So why do we need this ministry? I mean, I think these past presentations that have been done by Oxia and St. Phoebe have given such a beautiful articulation of that. I'll say from my own experience of working in youth ministry with girls from all parts of the country, all different ages, there's a desire, there's a yearning to know more, to understand more, and to be involved, coupled with a confusion as to why it's often limited and just it doesn't make sense to them, especially in a world where they're being invited to serve and lead in all ways. Why in their own church is that limited and not clear to them? And they just want to be close to Christ. And so that, coupled with hearing that from girls everywhere, especially these girls, coupled with this world we are living in, I see how distracting it is, how it is just, everything is pulling at our attention and it's pulling at our young people. And there are so many priorities pulling for their attention. And if we care, I feel a sense of urgency to pull our girls in as close to Christ as possible and to give them that experience of his love up close and personal, so that they choose this path, so they choose to stay close to the church, because it's harder to do that in this world when there are so many things pulling us away from that. And so I feel a sense of urgency to bring them in close. I have all of my guy friends who have stayed involved in the church all have stories of them being on altar. And there's something about that when we're a young person, the way especially our big Greek Orthodox churches are structured, we're at a distance. Our pews are a good 50 feet away from the altar area. We have our iconostases that are beautiful, but separating us a little bit from what's happening inside the altar. And it is hard to liturgy means the work of the people, but it's hard to be actively engaged in the service at such a distance, especially when you're a young person. So I feel a sense of urgency of inviting those with a desire to come in close, to taste and see, to be present so intimately at the greatest miracle of our faith that happens week after week. And I'm seeing the fruits that it's bearing in these young girls. And so I probably went over time. I'm sorry about that, but it's a beautiful ministry, and I'm thankful to be able to share it with you tonight.
Well, thank you very much, Anna. It's totally an very enlivening presentation, and yes, an incredibly beautiful ministry. And we hope that it's something that others can emulate as well. I'd now like to introduce our next presenter, Ms. Kristina Baktis. Let me spotlight her as well. Kristina is a licensed art therapist. She has grown up in the Orthodox Church as a daughter of a priest and army chaplain. From early childhood, she was encouraged to read, sing, and serve as an acolyte. In 2015, Kristina co-founded the Handmaiden Ministry at the OCA Cathedral of Holy Virgin Protection in New York City, Juliana Federoff, so that the girls in their parish could actively participate in the divine services. Kristina has advised other OCA parishes on how to start this ministry for their girls. She is currently the director of children's ministries at Mother of God, Joy of All Her Sorrow, Princeton, New Jersey. In addition, she is a board member of the St. Phoebe Center for the Deacons. So, Kristina. And we want to ask you to unmute. And how can I ask you to unmute? Let me move your spotlight quickly. Yeah. Here we are. Great.
All right. All right. Hi, everyone. Okay, so I wanted to start with how it started. So I am a daughter of a priest. You'll hear from my dad, Father Peter Baktis, in a few minutes. So as a daughter of a priest, right, we have one car family. Priest has to be at church an hour early. The whole family's at church an hour early. We are also, so here's a picture of me helping my dad bless homes, carrying the holy water. Here's also a picture of me setting up the chapel for service. So with the military, we use a chapel on the base that's for all services, all denominations, all ceremonies. And so for the Orthodox service, we have to set up the chapel. So I would set up the icons, put out the candles, the books, and being able to participate at a young age really helped fuel my love for Christ and my love for service. And I wanted to provide that opportunity for other children. So with Juliana Federoff, we were approached by our priest and our deacon, who noticed that the teenage girls and young girls were really disengaged during the service. And they commented how involved we were as young adults, and, you know, why weren't the teenagers as engaged? And we both said because we were really involved as children, and so we would like the girls to participate. And so that's when we came up with the idea of having this handmaiden ministry. I want to address the term handmaiden ministry because it's come up sometime with challenging that term. And it's a pretty common term to refer to female servants in the church. We have it in some of our prayers. Often when I receive communion, the priest will say, "The handmaiden of God, Kristina, receives the body and blood of Christ." And we needed to find a term that was common for our parishioners, that was connected to worship, but was different, because if we called them altar girls or acolytes, people would lose their mind. And so we want to have these these terms and ways of bringing this ministry about that can help people who might be hesitant about this or threatened by this or scared about this. So we hosted a retreat for the girls, and we shared some ideas with them about how we thought that they could serve, and asked for their ideas, because we really wanted this to be about their ministry. We didn't want this to be another thing where like adults are telling you what you have to do and what you how you have to serve. We wanted them to share their talents. And so we came up with holding the candle at the little entrance, at the gospel reading, at the great entrance, bringing the Antidodon to be blessed. And also we asked them what they wanted to wear. And we found that at the Annunciation Cathedral, the Greek Orthodox Cathedral in Atlanta, had girls wearing a white cape, which they called a mephorion, after the white garment that deaconesses would wear. So we asked the girls if they wanted to wear this cape, and they said yes. They thought that was really cool. And so we had someone in the parish who was willing to make it, but we started having them serve without the cape. And I would encourage anybody who is starting a ministry for girls at their parish to just start, right? Just get it started. It's never going to be perfect. We're not perfect, but God takes the little bit that we offer and multiplies it and grows it. So these are some pictures from early on. And then with the capes at the gospel reading. And some of the things that the girls were saying was that this was the first time they actually listened to what was going on in the liturgy, paid attention to the prayers that were being said, because they needed to know when they had to go get their candles. They received a blessing before putting on their capes from the priest, and so they would go to the edge of the sanctuary where the proscomedy room was and receive the blessing. And one little girl who was like 4 was like, never in my entire life did I think I would be allowed here. And so, you know, for a 4-year-old to say that, that's like pretty powerful. So I moved to New Jersey to my parents' parish, Mother of God, Joy of All Who Sorrow, and we started a similar ministry for the girls here. I got a lot of positive feedback from the community, from the parents, that their girls were able to be involved. Women who were so happy that their daughters were involved in a way that they didn't have the opportunity. And I heard from one older man that he really liked what I was doing with my little women and to keep it up. So there's this really positive feedback. And again, the girls learning about the liturgy, about the service, really connecting to their faith. So then COVID happened and demographics of our parish changed. And so we had this influx of a lot of little kids. So we have now no longer a handmaiden ministry and altar boys. We still have altar boys, but we have now a children's ministry where all the children are invited to serve and participate. So here we have the children lined up with icons for the great entrance, and walking with candles and icons during the great entrance. I just wanted to point out, I don't know if you could see back here, we have a couple of banners of Christ, of the Theotokos. We also have one of the icon of Pascha and the Nativity. And so sometimes the kids also carry these small child-sized banners. We have, here we have brother and sister smiling at each other during the great entrance. More pictures of all the kids at the great entrance. And this is really nice because the children start to take ownership of these things. And so we have older siblings helping their younger siblings out with standing in the right place and making sure your icon is facing everybody instead of towards yourself. Or we have these little tape dots on the floor where there's to help them know where they're supposed to stand. And so they're like, you have to stand on the spot. Or older cousins will help their younger cousins serve. So there's this real like teaching element and leadership that's developing even in like 7 even if like 5-year-olds, 5, 6, 7-year-olds, which is really nice to see. Here we have at Pascha, the kids in church school made banners that said Christ is risen, and they got to hold them during the procession. Also holding candles. And here's when our 25th anniversary was just recently, and we had Archbishop Michael visit. And so this was fun because traditionally we have, when we greet the bishop, one child gives a bouquet of flowers and someone presents a loaf of bread. And so we had each of the children hold a flower and present them to the bishop. And that was also coincided with learning about what is a bishop, who is our bishop, why is he visiting? You know, and when we were waiting to greet the bishop, the kids wanted to know, first of all, is this the bishop that was here last time? And they were like relieved that it was the bishop who was here last time because they know him. And then they wanted to know, should we shout surprise when he walks in the door? And I was like, no, we're gonna just tell him our names and ask for a blessing. And they start to notice things too of like, he's wearing different color vestments than he did last time he visited, or why was Father Peter wearing, you know, gold last week, but this week he's wearing blue. And so they're paying attention to church through their service. Also noticing that the commemorations during the Great Entrance take longer when the bishop's there than on a regular Sunday, and asking about that. So really getting to know more about their faith. Here we have some of our youngest. We have our choir director's son who has his little sensor and his battery operated candle, and he's sensing the church. Sometimes he also moves his arms around and directs while his mom is directing. We have the girls getting ready for the Great Entrance, and our youngest member in this picture, one Sunday while walking in the Great Entrance, she was walking around chanting, "Yay, I love church. Yay, I love church." And that's just like, that brings me so much joy. Like that we have these like small children that are so excited to come to church. I mean, I'm not always that excited to come to church. Definitely not, you know, walking around chanting, "Yay, I love church" all the time. And so to have that kind of witness in the midst of church, to be like so joyful about this, is really awesome. We also tie in other educational programs for the children. So we have every year at Thanksgiving, we have a lesson called Eucharist Means Thanksgiving. So we learn how to make prospera. So my mom, Matushka Gini, teaches all the children how to make prospera. We do little loaves, which is the like Russian Slavic style. And then they write down a list of the people living and departed that they're thankful for, so that they can be commemorated at proscomedia. And my dad does the service of proscomedia in front of the whole church. So the whole family is getting to learn how to make the bread. And the whole congregation is learning about the service of proscomedia, which is something that most people don't see because it's done before they get to church, over in a little room off to the side. So it's this huge learning experience. And one of the girls said that when she's a grown-up, she's going to have all the church school kids over to her house so she can teach them how to make bread. Here are a couple of the girls reading their list of names to Father Peter while he's doing the commemorations. And here are a couple pictures of the children's sermon. So once a month, we also have a children's sermon to tie in the lesson. So on the left, it was part of our Lazarus Saturday retreat. And I think on the right, that was the day that they did the proscomedia. And this is really also a great way to educate the entire parish. So we're breaking things down in this really simple way for kids, but that adults can also digest and understand. And it's also a nice opportunity that like the service just stopped and all the kids get to sit around and talk to the priest for a little bit and take a little break. And it just makes them feel important too. We also tie in helping with holidays. So I have a picture of a couple of the kids decorating the tomb for Good Friday and decorating Christmas tree at Christmas time. Again, the church is your home, and so just like we decorate for Christmas at home, we want to make sure we're decorating for Christmas at church, and really being involved in the life of the church in any way that they can participate. This last slide shows a couple of things that we have. So I have this bulletin board that the kids can sign up for a church job when they come in. So a couple of things like holding candles for the little entrance and the gospel. That's something that everybody can do, but taking the collection or giving out the Antietam is things that you have to sign up for. And so our church school kids sign up for those things. We also have some cloth icons that I made by just printing out a picture of an icon and ironing it on to some fabric, putting some batting in between it and sewing it so that the toddlers and babies can use this. I also made one for my friend whose daughter is autistic because she was peeling away the laminated icon on a wooden icon. And this one is more comfortable for her to hold during the Great Entrance. We use battery operated candles for safety. As someone who set her hair on fire when she was 7 with a candle, it's great. Kids can drop them, they can move them around, nobody's getting burned. And it's great practice for holding real candles. So thank you very much for letting me share a little bit about our children's ministry, and I look forward to hearing from our other presenters.
Great. Thank you very much, Kristina. And can I have Andy raise his hand in the reactions button? And I'll unmute you. Our next presenter is Andy Nosal. He's a marine biologist and a biology professor at Point Loma Nazarene University in San Diego, California. Andy grew up in an OCA parish in New Jersey and was an altar server there for 10 years, or nearly a decade, he says. Now he is a parishioner and board member at St. Gregory of Nyssa Greek Orthodox Church in El Cajon, California, where his daughter participates in liturgy as a congregational server, a program that was inaugurated last year. So here we'll hear from the perspective, now we move from the perspective of the organizer to the perspective of the parent.
Great, thank you very much and good afternoon from San Diego. I'll share my screen in just a minute. I just want to first start by thanking Axia Women and the St. Phoebe Center for hosting this important event and for inviting me to be a part of this panel. Again, my name is Andy Nosal. I'm a member of a small Greek Orthodox parish in San Diego, and my 9-year-old daughter, Isabel, participates in our parish's congregational server program. So the perspective that I'm bringing to this discussion is that of a parent, a proud parent who has witnessed his daughter grow personally and spiritually as a result of this ministry. So our program, unlike some of the other ones we heard, is very young. It was established only in October of 2022 with the help of Hermina Nedelescu. And the program began in a very structured way with a training session that was led by our parish priest one Sunday after liturgy. Let me go ahead and start sharing. So this training session began by our parish priest sitting the kids down at a pew and explaining to them the importance of serving and why this was such a big responsibility. Then we did several practice entrances and processions, and and it was enough so that the kids and also the parents who helped facilitate this program felt comfortable and confident with the timing and the different movements of the liturgy. So on any given Sunday, we have about 2 to 3 children serving, usually girls, but the program's open to boys too. In fact, Hermina's son served here for a while, and we just had another boy complete a training session, so he'll be joining the rotation soon. My daughter is here. If you can see my cursor here on the left, you'll see her face in a minute. And then her friend Katerina is on the right. She's actually the daughter of our deacon and diaconisa. As you see, they wear robes that are different from the altar servers, but certainly resembling the structure. And they get those blessed by the priest before the service begins. When they're not actively doing something in liturgy, they are sitting in the front left pew. So then when it comes time for the little entrance, the gospel reading, the great entrance, they approach the altar, and one of the altar servers brings out the candles for the girls, and the girls kind of stand by on the left entrance there, waiting for the clergy and the other altar servers to emerge. And when that happens, the girls then lead the procession, whether it's straight to the solea or in the case of the great entrance around the side and then down the center aisle. But either way, they're always ending up standing on either side of the solea closest to the iconostasis. And in addition to those liturgical movements, the girls also hold the antidoron bread during communion. So I mean, short of being in the altar, the boys and girls that participate in this program are becoming deeply involved with the liturgy and actually lead many of the liturgical movements that we see on a typical Sunday. Now, when I asked my daughter how it feels to serve in this program, what it means to her, she told me that she feels important, that she feels needed in the church. She tells me that she loves serving God and serving the church in this way. And also, quite astutely, she realizes that people are looking at her, that this is a new ministry for us. Young girls who may not be quite old enough for this yet, they're looking at her. And so Isabel realizes that she's a role model here. She realizes that there's a great responsibility with serving in this way, and she takes it seriously. And in many ways, this ministry, that the serving in this way has become part of her motivation to go to church, and for the whole family to arrive at church, not just on time, but a little early to actually get the process going, get the robes blessed and put on. It's also become clear to me that Isabel is so much more focused and invested in the liturgy now. She pays attention. She has to. She carefully follows along now in the service book for the entire liturgy. And in the service book, we have penciled in cues for her when it's time to go, when it's sitting time, standing time, when it's time to approach the altar. And so in addition to all the other benefits I've mentioned, Izzy is learning the structure of the liturgy in a way that she wasn't previously. This is truly active learning. It's learning by doing. Now, when I was a kid, as Teva mentioned, I was an altar server, and I did this for just about 10 years before I went to college. And I can very much relate to what my daughter was saying about feeling important and needed in the church. I definitely felt that every time I put on a robe, every time I carried a candle or a fan or the censer, every time I stood next to the priest, every time I led or participated in a procession. And so for me, I think being an altar server as a kid, was a way for me to take ownership of my faith and make it my own. So it's not just a tradition that was passed on to me, but my parents, but it was my own. And I have no doubt that those experiences and the fond memories of them played a big role in me still being a practicing Orthodox Christian and wanting the same for my daughters. And of course, I realized that my experience serving in the altar is not quite the same as my daughter's experience serving outside the altar. But even so, it's become so clear to me that congregational server programs like this provide such a great opportunity to transform our kids' liturgical experience from more or less a passive viewer and listener who is easily distracted, to an attentive participant, where it's much harder to get distracted. So to conclude my brief remarks here, as a parent, I'm very proud of my daughter and her service in this ministry. It brings me it just warms my heart. It brings me so much joy. I'm proud of all the other parents who have encouraged their kids to participate in this ministry and who have helped to facilitate it. I'm proud of our parish priest for blessing this program and for being intentional about embracing and elevating this ministry and giving it structure. And finally, I'm very proud of our parish for welcoming this ministry so warmly. I mean, look how happy we are. This program has not torn us apart. This ministry has not scandalized anybody to the point of them leaving the church. I don't really think it's even scandalized anybody at all. I've only heard positive feedback. And in fact, every time we have visitors come to the church, they're always complimenting the congregational server program, saying how wonderful it is to see girls participating this way in the liturgy, that they didn't even know something like that was possible, and how much they wish they could bring something like that back to their home parish. So this ministry has been a real blessing for our parish and for sure for my daughter and the other kids that participate. And I really hope that other parishes can similarly be blessed by having their own versions of this kind of ministry. So, thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Andy. And it is truly an inspiring story that you give to us. And our last presenter, I'll ask to unmute Very Reverend Father Peter Baktis, will speak particularly from the point of view of a parish priest, how these programs have been accepted from that point of view. So, Father Peter.
Hi, good evening, everybody, or afternoon for some, or morning for others, maybe. It's my great honor to be here and to be part of both St. Phoebe Center and Axia, two great ministries that serve a need in our church that are long overdue. As you heard from my daughter, it's something that we've done from the very beginning of my ministry, actually, in many ways. And I've been a priest now almost a little over 40 years. So I think what I would like to do is just summarize some things, but to clarify some terms first. I think one of the things that we need to do is language has importance. When we refer to the space that's called, many call altar, it's really the sanctuary. And the table itself is the altar. And so confusion comes about with us not using terms properly. And the only people that have a purpose at the altar are the ordained ministers. Those who are in the sanctuary are there to have a purpose. It's not a place just to hang out. I need a censer, I need the zone for the hot water, I need things that are sometimes given to me. So there's a purpose for people to be there. And the tradition of the church is that if you don't have a purpose, you don't belong there. That's why in the Byzantine tradition, the bishop's throne is not in the sanctuary, but outside the sanctuary. If he's not celebrating the service, he's presiding over the service, right? So we have to understand that sometimes comes where confusion is. And so when we say who actually belongs there, it doesn't have to do with male, female, or gender. It has to do with purpose. So let's do that first. The second thing that's very important about, I think that was mentioned in all the presentations and in the past of St. Phoebe, is this understanding of the incarnate Word of God, right? We have a God who chose to become incarnate. He created us and we missed the mark. And so he had to be part of his creation. And he brought salvation to the totality of the human race, not just males and not just females. And we may have particular functions as male and females, but that does not mean that we don't have a ministry of service in various functionaries of the church. When we're baptized, we're not baptized differently as females or males. We're baptized as people called into the waters to die and resurrect with our Christ. We don't baptize males and females differently. So the question is, why do we make this separation when it comes in service in the church? Why do we have to make these distinctions? And some of that has to be with the confusion of the ordained ministry and how we understand that in the Orthodox Church. And that's not my topic of conversation here, but that's a very particular thing. And we do have a male character of the ordination of priesthood. But that does not mean that there were other ministries within the church that were not shared by females. And I think, Anna, you were absolutely spot on. The women were the first to hear the resurrection of Christ. They were the evangelists that brought the message to the apostles, right? So again, it's a ministry. And when we look at the ministry of the women during the life of Christ, it's very apparent. And the confusion, and thanks be to God that we got that confusion out of the Orthodox Church when it comes to Mary Magdalene, who is really equal to the apostles, right? So we have these ministries from the very organic part of the church. And I think that's the reality that I think I would like to talk about is that the church is an organic living being. And as organic living beings, we often change and adapt to change. And perhaps the function of the female diaconate went out of use at a period of time, but that does not mean that the church forsaken or dropped that ministry. And it's something that we need to revisit as an organic living reality. Is it time for us to have this ministry that is needed within the church? And the way that we do that is by organically integrating the totality of our community, male and female. And so when the question comes to me, why do you allow girls to be servers or acolytes or whatever you want to say? I'd say, well, why not? What prevents someone from serving in the ministry of the church? Our gospel this morning, for those in the Orthodox Church, from Matthew, the second part of that gospel was when Jesus asked them, whose son is this? And they said, well, it's David's. And he said, well, if David said, sit at my right hand, how could it be? And it said, no one further questioned the Lord from that period of time, right? So the question is not a justification or that we have to justify this ministry. It's something that should be accepted as an organic reality of the people of God. We're created in the image of God, male and female. And so the second thing that I would like to say about as a priest in doing this ministry is I think also what has been said is the educational aspect of it. I cannot overemphasize how the children who are now totally integrated into the life of the church in service have impacted the service of their parents to the community. So much so that I get parents sometimes telling me, Father, could you tell my daughter it's okay not to come to church next week? Right? That's a good thing, right? That's a good thing. Out of the mouths of babes shall come wisdom. So it's a total learning experience for the whole community in rediscovering who we are as Orthodox Christians, that we're not somehow foreign, and that it's not a question of a feminist agenda. It's a question of living the incarnation of our Lord to its fullness in the community of the worshiping space, right? So education is there. Then I think, the as my daughter said and others have witnessed to, when you're integrated into that worshiping community, you begin to live that in your life. And so I will have, the children, when I do a children's sermon, will ask me some very difficult questions sometimes that they have in life, that they were approached by friends of theirs on the playground. And they want to be able to respond to their friends from their teaching of their church and of the God to which they worship. And so they become evangelists, right? Because when you're integrated into that community, you begin to live that life. And then it's just a natural phenomenon that you want to share it with your friends. And kids are the greatest people that do that. We adults are like, oh, I don't want to tell somebody I'm Christian. But we're willing to say, hey, did you go out to eat at such and such a place? That was such a great dinner. Well, yeah, I spent about $500 on dinner, but it was really great. But we would never say to our friends, I had the perfect meal this week in the life of my total life. And that was the Eucharist, the precious body and blood of our Lord. And I want to invite you to that table, right? That costs nothing, right? So our children become the integrated life and spreading the witness of our Lord and incarnate God. And I think the last thing that we have to address is the issue that some have talked about, where I think there's an unhealthy fear. There's an unhealthy fear of understanding what authority is and who has that authority. And I could tell you, I grew up Orthodox, and I'm now 67 years old or somewhere around there, two years younger than dirt. I don't remember, outside of the priest, a significant male in my upbringing in the church. I don't. I remember many females, my grandmother, other ladies in the parish, who were doing the things that encouraged me in my ministry, right? They were changing the altar cloths. They were cleaning, they were beautifying the space with flowers. They were greeting us, right? They made sure that I was quiet and I didn't run around in church, right? So the people that really impacted me were really the people that impacted the world when they received the first message of the resurrection. And so it's not a matter of authority, but it's a matter of witness, and it's a matter of integrity, and it's a matter of integration. And I think that's what the movement and the moving forward, and why so many parishes are incorporating the reality of having an integrated service of witness with our children, both male and female, in the parish, because it's the organic reality of the manifestation of the incarnation of Christ in the worship context. And we're asked to go out and live that in the world. And if we cannot live that in the church, we cannot live it in the world. And the last thing that I would like to say is that what I have seen in my limited experience within this ministry is that when we integrate both male and female into really the witness and incorporation of the church, we prevent the horrors that sometimes happen in the indiscriminate treatment of women in the world. When a young man stands next to a female in a worshiping context, he will think twice about abusing his girlfriend or wife, because he learned that they are co-sharers in the life of Christ. And so we will spread a message of unity, peace, love, compassion, and understanding for all. And I think that's the most important aspect that we do, is to really to witness that we who are called Christians live a different life. And as in the book of Acts said, they were first called Christians in Antioch, not because they had big churches, but because they lived the incarnational reality of the love, compassion of Christ in the world. So I thank you for this time, and I'm very honored again to be asked to be with you all. God bless, and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Well, thank you very much, Father Peter. It was incredibly moving to hear your remarks. And I'm now going to ask all our panelists, I'm going to spotlight them again, and we will now entertain your questions. We invite you to ask any questions that you would like from our panelists, and to raise your hand in the reactions button so that we can see you and call on you appropriately.
I would also ask everybody to realize that we're running out of time, so keep your questions or your remarks to the point, please, and indicate which panelist that you're talking to. So, Paul.
Okay. I guess I'm on now. Oh, I am on. Oh dear. I'm Paul Kriego from Washington, D.C. I'm a bit of a ringer. I belong to the Episcopal Church, but I've been studying the Orthodox churches for many decades, especially the Orthodox Church in the Republic of Georgia. And one of the things that I encounter there is a doctrine of purity that is sometimes very ugly. What I've heard tonight, apparently the breach of purity hasn't been an issue in your churches, and I'm happy to hear that. Have you encountered concerns of that in other parts of your churches, or not, or what do you hear about that? Especially since I think in all of your programs, the women and girls kind of stay outside of the sanctuary, if I'm correct. That's it.
Was there a particular person you wanted to have?
No, if anybody wants to address it, that's fine.
So maybe Anna, if you'd like to address that, because your girls do actually enter the sanctuary.
Yeah, I mean, there is definitely remnants of this purity, what you're referring to, purity rituals and such. I think actually people far more educated than I have addressed how we as an Orthodox Church respond and kind of the history of where that has come from. And it's a little bit complex, but I know Carrie Frost has spoken beautifully about it. And in her book, The Church of Our Granddaughters, if you wanted to read that book really digs into that a lot and very well. And so I'll let them speak to it. But as Father has mentioned, and I think Teva mentioned at the beginning, the way our Orthodox Church, that a woman's response to that is that a woman's gender, a female's gender, does not preclude them, nor all that is wrapped up in a woman's gender does not preclude them from being in the sanctuary or that altar area, not the altar itself, but the sanctuary behind the icon screen. And so our girls were given a blessing and purpose and a blessing to serve and to pass through the sanctuary. So our girls actually do stand in the sanctuary area behind the icon screen during different parts of our service when they have a reason for being there and are participating in that part of the service. So Father, I don't know if you want to elaborate at all on any of that.
No, I would just say that because this introduction of having female servers is new in many communities, we have to do things in baby steps, right? So again, Scripture says there are many things that we can do, but there's few things that we may do. And we need to know the time that's right, Our Lord Jesus Christ, the Word of God, was not incarnate by random. In God's time, things happen, and we have to respect God's time.
There is a question that came in the chat that perhaps one of you can address. Thank you so much for this. Can you speak to the roles of quote unquote women as life bringers and quote unquote men as sacrificers in the liturgy? This is what has been explained to me as the reason for women not serving behind the, she meant to say iconostas, which has an altar. Would any of you, perhaps Father Peter, would like to address that reasoning?
I've never heard of that. The only person that offers this sacrifice is the ordained priest, right?
Mm-hmm.
That is my sole function. When we look at it, being a priest is not a glorious thing. It's really sort of a service of sacrifice. My only function in the church is to offer the sacraments. Now you give me a lot more that I have to do, right? I have to be an administrator. I have to be all this other stuff. But really, the only person that offers is that the diaconal function is one of service. The bishop's function, he's a priest. He never loses that priesthood. But his function is to define the truth and to be the image of unity. So I'm not sure where that comes from, and I apologize if I did not answer the question appropriately.
Great.
Hermina has had her hand up.
Yes.
Thank you. Hi. Hello, everyone. It's so nice to see you. My question is first to Kristina, and I'm hoping that Anna can chime in with hopes that I've spoken to Andy Nosal about the next step, which would be for the congregational servers to begin to serve also in the sanctuary, because the processions start and end in the sanctuary. So my question, Kristina, to you is, because you've spoken of the handmaiden ministry that you started first with girls, and then that transformed into all children, where the girls and boys were no longer separated. How long did that take? And then maybe Anna can, I know you mentioned 2016 is when you started your program, but my understanding is that when you said when the girls are not active, they are outside of the sanctuary. So I want to know, when the boys are not active, what are they doing? Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So in both of the ministries that we've done, the girls still remain outside of the sanctuary area and join up with the altar boys. And the same thing with just the general children. We have a couple of altar boys because there is a need for having people serving within the sanctuary to get sensors and hot water and all kinds of stuff, right? And the children stay with their families and then join for the processions. And if there's no altar boys that day, then the children are just processing. And so we still have that separation. And I think that we have the fact that we have boys serving as altar boys and not as altar boys, I think it opens up to the possibility of exploring differences within ministry and what does that look like for all genders. So, saying, if you're a boy, you must be an altar boy. If you're a girl, you must sing in the choir. If you're a boy, you do this. If you're a girl, but now it's like more general. So my hopes are that girls will be able to go into the sanctuary and serve if they feel called to do that. But that's, again, like a baby step process in our diocese.
Anna, how did you get it going? Because I've spoken to Dr. Nosal about this next step. How did you get the girls to start in the sanctuary?
Oh, you're muted.
All right, sorry about that. The original participation back in 2016 was very limited just during Holy Week. And then this expansion was actually prompted by our Metropolitan at his invitation. And so that bore a lot of weight. It is uncommon at this point in our church to have girls passing through that sanctuary area behind the icon screen. And so our hierarch is really who opened the door to that being possible. Along with we have a lot of thoughtful people thinking it through and proposing and encouraging it. So it was very much a conversational process. That's really what made it possible, I think, I'm not sure that step would have been taken without the hierarch's blessing and invitation to do that. Our girls they're spending more and more time in the sanctuary area alongside the boys. They also get their robes blessed by the priest prior to serving. They get his blessing, very similar to the altar boys. Their robes are in the cabinet next to the altar boys. So there's a lot of synergy between the Myrrh-bearers and the altar boys. They work very well together. It's actually really beautiful. Father, I really resonated with what you were saying. The camaraderie that is developing between them is just really beautiful. But they do at this point, again, baby steps. At this point, I would say probably 50% of the liturgy there in the sanctuary, 50% there, maybe even 60 there, 40 in the choir area while they're not serving actively.
Judith, you have a question.
Yes, I'm very impressed by all the speakers talking about participation of the congregation in the liturgy. I've been in a Facebook group conversation when people from different jurisdictions and actually from different countries talking about the people in the congregation singing with the choir. And outside of the US, people are saying, no, you don't sing with the choir sings, and that's where the service is. And almost everybody in the United States saying, oh yes, you sing, it's part of what you do, you participate, you're there. And I'm concerned, do you think, because I think that's wonderful, that this whole idea that and certainly in the every parish I've been in has only been in the US, we're expected to participate, to be part of it. And I'm wondering if this is something that's coming a lot from the US, less so than some of the places outside of the US. And I think it's wonderful. And do you think that that's part of including of the church growth, and of course having girls be part of that too. So, anyway, that's my question.
I can say something to this. I mean, just as a teacher now, I mean, it seems like it's all about learning by doing. I mean, I'm a biology professor. You learn science by doing science, right? Not just being lectured at. And so I really feel what you're saying, like, yes, we need to be doing liturgy. Yes, singing and, responding and during the litanies and serving in whatever capacity we can. And so I just feel like, and maybe not everybody will feel comfortable being a server in this way. I mean, because I talked to my daughter, like, what other ways do you think you might want to participate in liturgy? Do you think someday you'd like to be in the choir or to read the epistle? And she was like, yeah, I think so. I'm not really sure, like, because not everybody has a voice, right? Not everybody feels confident reading in front of a bunch of people, but she feels confident participating in this way. So I think it's just one other opportunity for us to participate. So, yeah.
I would agree too about this being about really like reclaiming, I think, our participation in our faith. And I think the pandemic has something to do with this, right? Like we were a lot of not not priest families. We were still live streaming the liturgy, but a lot of other people were at home watching the live stream of the liturgy. And like maybe you were standing up when you would normally stand up, or maybe you were sitting on your couch drinking coffee and participating that way, right? And so I think that some of this has to do with also where our church is historically and culturally in the countries where where the Orthodox Church exists. And so I think also about things like, my mom went to a summer camp and learned that she should be receiving the communion frequently. And she came back to her church in Brooklyn, and my grandma said, stop going to communion every week. People think you did something really bad, that you need communion every week. And then, that's, let's say, another 20 years, 10 years later, I only know my grandmother going to communion every Sunday. I only know frequent communion. So I think that these are things that, it involves education. It involves, encouraging people to participate, dispelling these kinds of myths. And the more that we can do things like this, the better. I also just want to mention that I put in the chat some additional resources if you want to start your own children's ministry, girls ministry. So there's an article that I wrote for our diocesan magazine, Jacob's Well. There's a link to that. There's a link to a Google, shared Google file that has some letters that priests wrote to their community, introducing the handmaiden ministry, and a link to Draw Near Designs, where I got the small child-sized banners for our kids.
Great. With that, I wanted to thank all of our speakers and presenters and all of you. And I'm going to then now hand it over to Pat for our wrap up.
Thank you all very, very much. Anna, I want to really thank you for bringing out the Myrrh-bearers. Axia has a special relationship with the Myrrh-bearers ourselves, so it was especially beautiful to hear how that ministry has evolved in your parish. And it was very moving. And I was also very struck also by His Eminence Metropolitan Nathaniel's encouragement of, you're not just bringing women's and girls' roles to one part of the year, but to expand it throughout the entire year. I really hope that other hierarchs hear about that and are encouraged and decide to take similar action. Kristina, I love how you brought out the love of Christ through the love of service, and also encouraging people to just start even before everything is perfect. That's really so important. And I'm so impressed with how you yourself have spread this ministry wherever you've gone, a little bit like a sort of Johnny Appleseed in a way, and how the children themselves, through your example, are spreading the knowledge and joy among themselves through this being in church, through the ministry that you've seeded. Andy, it was, I mean, you really highlighted how important it is for our girls and all our children to feel important and needed in church, and to be role models, and to feel themselves taking responsibility and learning by doing, and actually taking ownership of their faith. We all need to take ownership of their faith. Some of us come to it much later than the children in your parish do. And I think that's really important and beautiful. And it sounds like it has also energized your own worship as a parent and as for everybody in your parish. And that could hardly be more important or more beautiful. And Father Peter, honestly, thank you. I've heard you speak on another time, on other occasions, and it's always really inspiring. And here, the fact that you clarified the terms around the altar and the sanctuary, it's really important that people understand that, understand purposes and ministries that they have, and where they should be doing those things, and how important it is for everybody to bring everybody into the service as an organic whole. We're all created in the image and likeness of God, all of us. And it's also beautiful to think how energizing the young, as we've said, about what Andy was saying, also energizes the whole parish. And then people taking that out into the world with them as evangelists, which is what we're called to do. But this makes it, again, organic. And anyway, this was a really inspiring panel discussion. And I thank you all on Oxy's behalf. So again, good evening. Thank you. And we have had a request for a part 4. So if y'all will keep an eye out for that, there'll be, that may take us a while, but we'll get back to you on that as it happens. And Teva, also thank you for being the rock and the pillar around whom we have been organizing these things. That's all for me.
Great. Well, thank you all for coming, and good night.